Hello and welcome to Elite Insights with Tony Patillo. I'm your host, and this is where wisdom meets legacy. I'm really excited about today's episode because we got a really unique human being that's going to be sharing with us. On this show, we usually highlight leaders who inspire and innovate and really make they have strong purpose and really make a difference in the lives of others. So I'm really excited about our guest today. And this is an award-winning attorney, activist, storyteller, who has impacted trust and estate law and beyond. He's not only a nationally recognized litigator, but also a creative visionary using his voice and platform to blend the arc of history toward justice. So please welcome to, they say, welcome to the stage, Mr. Terrence Terry Franklin. And thank you so much for joining us, Terry.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here and for helping me to bend the arc.
That's right. That's right. So we're going to get to know you a little bit better here. And I'm going to present you with some questions and then we're just going to let it flow. I'm not a real scripty type person. So sometimes I just like to rap and just get it on, right?
Go with the flow.
Go with the flow. So let's talk about this incredible career as a trust and estates litigator. How did you get started and what first drew you into this practice initially?
Right. That's a really good question. And in some ways, the answer was, I don't know. People would ask me, oh, you do trust and estate litigation. How did you end up there? And with hindsight, I know it's my ancestors were leading me there. But at the time, I was, kid from the south side of Chicago, didn't know any lawyers really, or didn't know any much professions at all. My parents were both sort of bureaucrats, working hard. My dad worked for the federal government. My mom worked for the telephone company.
Okay.
But I didn't know any lawyers. But when people ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a professor because people said you're smart. So those are the three things that were possible for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't good at science, or at least the math stuff I didn't want to do. So somehow I found myself moving towards the law. And the more I sort of directed myself towards the law, I started trying to figure out, what do I have to do to go to law school? What do I have to do to go to the good law school? And so I channeled myself and tried to do well in school and went to undergrad, went to Harvard Law School. And when that was over, I did what most people do when they leave law school. Many of us at least go to a big law firm because you want to see what that experience is like. And I went to a large law firm in Los Angeles and was doing general litigation stuff. And at some point, a partner who had been doing cases that involved trust and estate litigation, and I probably need to explain a little bit what that is, but it's fighting over people's wills and people's trusts, the money that they've left behind. And this one partner who had been a estate lawyer, so he knew about estate planning and taxes, but he also had sort of a bent for litigation. And at least in the late 80s, nobody had really combined trust and estate litigation together into sort of one practice area. So there were these litigators who sometimes would take on a case that involved a dispute regarding a will or a trust. And then there were estate planners who never really wanted to go to court at all.
Right.
But this kind of hybrid was something that was just beginning at the late 80s when I started practicing law. And this one partner said, hey, we're starting a firm that's going to do trust and estate litigation. And if you ever want to do something different from just the general litigation, think about it. So in 1992, I jumped ship from the big firm and went to this little small startup firm and started doing trust and estate litigation. So it seemed random at the time. Something that I happened to stumble on with the right person who asked me the right question at the right time. But now looking back, I started practicing this in 1992. Looking back now, I realized that my ancestors had a plan for me, and they needed me to be a trust in estates litigator.
Yes. Yes. That's beautiful. I like the idea and not the idea, but I like the fact that you are being divinely guided, and it was your ancestors. You were see that's not many people tap in and understand that at a young age for sure.
Well,
And
and the thing is, I didn't understand it. I think I was in my late 40s
mhm,
when I really figured out, that these ancestors had been guiding me, because I was like, I think probably most people in our Western culture, and at least in my religious experience, was people die, they go to heaven. And, sometimes there would be people who would talk about some influence or some crossing over or some connection to the ancestors, or I'd read Maya Angelou, and I always felt a little bit disconnected from it, because I thought, oh, that doesn't seem scientific. That's
right.
not me. I haven't experienced the ancestors touching me. My ancestors are in heaven, that kind of feeling. And then, in 2014, that all kind of changed for me, because
Mhm.
I got a very clear signal that there were forces that were helping to guide me. And as I began to dig deeper and deeper, I figured out it's my ancestors telling
Mm.
me that I have this
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah. You have a purpose.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and
And now that I know it, I can't stop telling other people. We all have this, and you got to
yeah,
figure that out. That's what life is about.
that's right. That's right. That's so true. You know, you're also a creative storyteller and an activist, which really excited me. And one of the real reasons I wanted you to come with me, because I can relate to the activists. My parents were civil rights activists for years, and you know, my sister and my father were also singers. And so there was a lot of creative, and my mother, now that I think about it, my mother was an opera singer. And my dad used to sing, and my sister sang. So I've been around creatives, and I've been around the civil rights activists. So there was a huge influence, to
Right.
be that took place, that when I was much younger, of course, I didn't realize what it was, but now I know. And so here we are today, and that's so exciting that you've been able to combine your professional talent, and at the same time fold in your creative juices, your creativity, which is
And it's
very neat.
almost maybe in spite of me,
Yeah.
my parents were not activists. They worked hard, and they tried to do the right thing, and they cared about civil rights, but they were also not the people who were on the front lines.
Right.
I had friends who were, Jesse Jackson's kids went to high school with me, and
Okay.
Michelle, future Obama Robinson, was in my high school French class for 3 years. And at the
Wow.
time, a lot of us were not activists. We were just, we cared about Black people, and, I was certainly involved in Black history and all of that. But my mom was always kind of like, well, don't you go get in any trouble. She kind of like,
Yeah.
she was, concerned about protecting me and not wanting me to be in situations where I might be unsafe.
Yeah.
But over the course of a lifetime, and, coming to learn, once I found these, I'll talk a little bit about, how I found some original documents from 1846
Mm.
and 1847 that helped deal with my family's escape to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's become clear to me that my role is to be active, is to
Mm.
face the fact that we live in a world, and if it wasn't clear before last November, it's certainly clear now, in a world where struggle for equality of all people in this country is an ongoing battle.
Right.
And I think the point that I've come to understand is that whether you choose to be an activist and take up the charge or not, you're making a choice. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're not choosing to try to make the world better, then you're choosing to accept it as it is. So that's been sort of the activist inspiration. And then meeting people. My husband is somebody who would never stand for a lot of the things that I think, because I'm a person who was always trying to make it in institutions that that we didn't find ourselves in all the time.
Right.
Try to find how I can, just go with the flow, not cause any trouble. Sometimes, I'd go to rallies or sit-ins and things like that, but I wasn't necessarily the leader.
Right.
But I know this is what we all have to do if we want to make the world better.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's very relative to where we're at today,
Right.
and
And the
I
importance of art, that's
found,
the other thing that you're pointing out is you have family members who are singers and performers. And while I would sing in choirs, I didn't think of myself as an artist. I thought artists are certain people who have special skills or who somehow know how to do it really well.
right.
And only when, somebody said, hey, we're here, we're making music together on a Sunday night, with a bunch of guitars and a guitar collective. And this is now my husband, but my boyfriend at the time. And I was like, wow, people who just come together to create music because it's so good and powerful.
Yeah.
Maybe I could be an artist too. Maybe there's something in me that I can pull out. And then to all those choirs that I sang in, all of that was a reminder to me that I wasn't just doing that because I was in church or in college choir, but because, I can make something. I can create. I can write a song or sing or tell a story. And that making of art that communicates to someone and helps them to feel something is a really powerful thing.
Yeah. It's a very fulfilling thing when you know that you have an impact on someone. Right. So I think it's very unique that not only are you a litigator and working with family law and estates and whatnot, but you have this beautiful creative storytelling thing, and it's resonant and it's perfect. So I'm so excited about this. So what let's talk about some of the challenges that you've faced when you see families that come to estate planning and trust dispute. What are some of the common challenges that you see with these families?
Yeah, the thing that probably stands out the most is that so many of these disputes, even though they're about, a money or property on its face, that they're really about emotional dysfunction. And typically, it's been the family where everyone has all gotten along because dad was keeping the lid on the pot of, so everything's been simmering, all of these hostilities. And then once dad is gone, all of that fury and anger gets vented among the family members, or the stepmother and the stepkids have never really gotten along. But, now that dad's passed away, it all comes back. Or the brother and sister who had a fight about something that really hurt the sister emotionally when she was a little kid. And somehow they've all pushed it down and kept going. And now that the parents are no longer here to keep them in line, they're going at each other the way they used to, and the way they wish they could, even still. And so I guess the challenge is trying to figure out how to negotiate the law while recognizing that people are motivated by powerful emotions. Don't always understand that a rational way to resolve a case may be to split the difference and share the money, whereas the rational isn't what's controlling. What's controlling is I gotta win. I gotta beat this person before they beat me.
Yeah, it's ego driven. This is brings me to think about my business as well. I specialize in probate and would work with a lot of families and a lot of people who didn't have a will, and didn't have an estate. a trust. They didn't have a trust. So we find that, there's a handful of these people who inherit the responsibility of being a successor trustee, or not even a successor trustee, because they don't have a trust with the probate. They are either signed as a personal representative, an administrator, or an executive, right? And I'm just wondering, because, I see this a lot with probate. I see the families that have I've had some really, really interesting cases that, are really tough. And you have to play in the middle, and you have to not be siding with anyone. You literally become their, an advocate to get them through the challenge, and
Right.
to get them through they're very complicated, so it's not just a typical transaction. It's a very convoluted transaction, and it takes time, depending upon how complicated it is, right? It does take time. So you have to be prepared to go the distance,
Right.
and you become like a therapist with everyone, right?
You have to, and as you say, it takes a lot of time, and time is money.
Mm-hmm.
And so the longer it goes on, the more it's draining,
Mm-hmm.
whatever's going to be left.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you do have to take the time that it takes to get through this process. I mean,
Right.
the law assumes that it takes at least a year for property to get through probate.
Right.
And it's often much longer than that.
Yep.
People have a sense when someone's passed away that, oh, I'm going to get my inheritance soon, and then I can, change my life. And so that becomes very scary and emotional for them, because they're still waiting for this money to come in.
Right.
And they've been either counting on it, maybe they were counting on it before, maybe they weren't counting on it before, but once they realize that there's a possibility, we all do it. We start calculating, maybe I can buy that house after all.
Right.
And it's not a healthy thing, because in the end, it just leads to frustration unless you can come up with a way.
Mm-hmm.
And for me as the lawyer, to try to manage the client's expectations so that they're not expecting unreasonably that they're going to get all their money right away, or that it's all going to come, because things happen that affect it, especially if you don't do estate planning in advance, to avoid the costs of probate, and to avoid the expense, and to reduce the number of issues that might come up in the event that someone passes away.
I'm going to ask kind of a layman question here as it relates to trust versus versus the probate. And I deal with both of those, and it's very interesting because they're very similar in certain ways, but yet they have a very distinct, like there are probate attorneys that specialize just in that area. And then there are trust attorneys, right? And I just want to get from your perspective, like, what is the distinction here? Because I think it's important for people to know that.
It's an important distinction. And essentially, whenever someone passes away, you have to figure out how their property goes from their ownership to someone else's ownership. If someone has a trust that they create while they're alive, it's sometimes called an inter vivos trust, which means while you're living.
Mm-hmm.
And what it means is that you take your property and you say, I own this property, and I'm managing it right now as the trustee of the Terrence Franklin Trust. Mm-hmm. And when I pass away, or if I become incapacitated, I want this to happen smoothly, that someone else will step in and take on the property and handle it and manage it, or will distribute it the way that I have determined that I want it to be distributed after I'm gone.
Yeah.
So when I pass away, or if I become incapacitated, the person that I've named in that trust as my successor trustee can easily step in and say, Terrence has passed away. I'm now the trustee, and that means I'm the one who can take responsibility for handling this property. And I can do whatever I have to do. If we've properly done the trust in the first place, we've also transferred into the trust the actual property. So the home that I own is a part of the trust. And everything that I do is me acting as the trustee of the Terrence Franklin Trust. If you don't have a trust and you pass away, then what's going to happen is there will be probate. It's still a way to transfer the property from the ownership of the person who had it to someone else. But now we don't know who is going to be the person who's responsible for it. And because there's no clear path for how that property is supposed to pass, the state gets involved. So that means we have to file a petition for probate. And we have to say, I'm, Terrence's husband or Terrence's sister or Terrence's whatever, and I'm the one who should take responsibility for managing the assets that he owned and transferring them out to the people that he would have cared about or into his heirs. And that starts a whole process because maybe there's a disagreement about who should be the one who's going to be in charge of the estate. And then there are questions about, whether all the property is truly in the estate. Have you truly gathered or marshaled all the assets? Because that's the other job of the personal representative, who is also called an executor if you actually have a will.
Yeah.
So the real differences between a trust and a probate is that a trust handles the disposition of property after someone passes away, but it's also created while they're alive, whereas a probate involves the transfer of ownership of property from one person to whoever, but there is no trust document that directs how it's supposed to happen. So if the state becomes involved, that means that there are mandatory trustees fees that are mandatory executors fees that are paid to whoever handles it. There's mandatory attorney's fees that are paid to the attorney who helps to get those properties distributed. So you can save time and expense, although it isn't a cost to create the trust, to work with a lawyer to create a trust in advance, but it's typically going to be much less than the cost of actually going through a probate having that.
Yeah. Beautiful. I had a case about a year, I guess it's about a year and a half ago. And this was a probate, but it was also dealing with the fact that his most recent wife, who is the first of kin, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
She and her husband didn't have any children. This is his third wife. They didn't have any children, but he had kids that were adults and grandparents of their own. They were from the first marriage. So now she and her late husband had only been married for about 90, I want to say about a year and a half. Okay.
Right.
So the kids were contesting, of course, they were contesting that she, they actually went out and got an attorney and they filed a petition on their own. And she had also filed a petition. So that was very interesting. And it just, throughout the process, it was very, I don't know how to thank you. That was what it was. Very contentious.
That's not unusual, because if you think about it, here's a person who fell in love with someone and they have a relationship together. He wants to make sure that she's taken care of. And you can see from her perspective, who's saying he loved me and he wanted to make sure that I'll be well taken care of. But from the kids' perspective, they're saying, who's this Johnny come lately lady?
Right.
Our mother was with him for many years before. Mm-hmm. Of course, we are the ones that he wanted to take care of. And they both have points and valid points. And unless Dad has gone to the trouble of doing the estate planning to make sure that at least he has expressed his desire for how things should work. Because I'm not saying they're going to be happy with what Dad said.
Right.
But if he doesn't say it, then it's just each one of them with their very strong and often valid feelings about how things should be handled. Mm-hmm. And the law's got to figure that out. What is the law going to do in terms of distributing and allocating these valuable properties between these two factions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was the two attorneys, one representing the kids and the other representing the surviving spouse. And then there was me, the broker who represented the surviving spouse, and of course the kids wanted their own realtor, right? Oh boy, that was a humdinger. I'll tell you that right now.
And the costs are going up with every time you add another person, right? Or
Absolutely,
splitting that money around everybody. So,
exactly.
it's a
Yeah,
cost.
and the people don't realize when you get into these probates, every dime counts. Okay, and usually, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only a certain percentage of that an attorney can receive.
Yes, there's a
Yeah.
statutory amount that's based on the value of the size of the estate
Right.
that is automatically paid, or at least that the executor and the attorney are entitled to at the end of the probate, and the court will order that.
Yeah.
But because of these fights, or because if there are tax issues, or if there's real estate that's involved, there are things called what we call extraordinary fees. And extraordinary fees are additional costs that are incurred by an attorney to help handle this estate. They can't be paid until a court orders it or authorizes it from the probate estate. But those can be very high, especially if you're dealing with contentious people, as you say, who are fighting and they're going back and forth. And is it fair that, the estate should pay somebody's fees, but not somebody else's? And all those arguments get played out every day over and over again. And in my experience as a lawyer.
Yeah, that's awesome. From your perspective, what's the single most important step property owners, especially high net worth families? What is the most common step that they should take to avoid a costly litigation?
Yeah, I think probably to see a lawyer who is competent, who can do an estate plan that really explains what you want to happen in the event you're not able to make those decisions yourself. That's really the key, is to try and do it early while you're healthy and well and know what you're doing, and nobody can question your capacity to understand what's happening, and then to update it periodically so that, we don't know. None of us knows when we're going to leave the planet. And surprisingly, people are more often disabled or find themselves dealing with people who are incapacitated more often than you think.
Yeah.
And so you need to be prepared, because what if you are just in a hospital for a week and you've been hit by something and you can't communicate?
Right.
Is there something that you should have in place so that people who have to make decisions for you, because it's the other thing that's related to this, is how much do you want additional emergency care given, et cetera? That doesn't go to the value of the property, but that goes to your life.
Yeah.
And so it's really important for people to get the proper advice and put in writing what their intentions are, because that's what the court is always going to be trying to figure out, is what was your intent.
And things change over the years. So it's really important to update. I worked with it wasn't a probate. This is a regular trust sale. But this gentleman, the deceased now, had 5 different updates, addendums, if you would, to the original trust. And each time he was changing out who the successor trustee would be, or who the beneficiaries would be. But I have to give him credit. He changed his trust many times. And as things would change in his life, he made sure that his trust was reflective of his real desires, right?
That's the important thing, changes. People change. The world changes. Everything changes. But to document what those changes are is really, really important.
That's the key.
As a litigator, I'm so excited when I get a file when somebody's challenging a trust, and I can look at a history of previous trusts that gave similar gifts to the same people. That goes a long way to convincing the judge that this is consistent and this is what they wanted to do. Or if they completely changed it, that they include language in the trust that says, for various reasons, I've decided that I no longer want to look after Terrence. And that, he's doing well on his own, but his brother isn't doing so well. So I want to make sure that his brother is going to be receiving more than Terrence is. So that kind of information is really important to help make sure that your wishes are carried out.
Right, right. So you've worked on landmark cases like Moeller. Is it Moeller? Am I saying that right?
Called Moeller.
Moeller.
It was a Supreme Court case in California that dealt with the issue of whether or not you truly have an attorney-client privilege with, for a trustee, you hire a lawyer, and typically you expect that you should be able to have full communications with your lawyer and not have to worry about anybody else having access to them.
Right.
But what happens if I do something bad as a trustee, and then I'm removed as a trustee? So the new trustee comes in and they say, I want to know what you talked to your other lawyer about. I want to know what the lawyer talked to the prior trustee about because I think they did bad stuff. And the way the Moeller case worked out is that if someone doesn't pay for their own attorneys up front and they rely on the trust to pay for the attorneys, if that person is removed and someone else comes in afterwards and becomes the new successor, they step into the shoes of the previous trustee and they now have the right to access the attorney-client communications with the prior lawyer. So, it's sort of technical issues, but they have real-life consequences because getting access to the communications between the prior trustee and the lawyer is some pretty significant information.
It's important. Yeah. Although, like you say, it conflicts with the attorney-client privilege things, so to speak, right?
Yeah, there's always that tension, and that's what makes cases because there's one side that has one point of view and the other has a different point of view, and at any given moment, if you twist the kaleidoscope just right, you look like the good guy. Now you look like the good guy, and that's part of our role as lawyers is to figure out how we can make sure that our clients are presenting their best good guy case.
Wow. It's complicated.
That's why we get paid the big bucks.
That's right. Wow. So I want to talk a little bit about bending the arc of history and legacy work. One of the most powerful parts of your story is the will that freed your ancestors from slavery in 1846. Can you share what it felt like to uncover that piece of history and how it reshaped your sense of purpose?
Yes, it's been quite a revelation. I think I said it started in 2014. I had a great aunt who was turning 100, and I wanted to do something special to honor her 100th birthday. And I had previously seen in some family reunion materials, some information about this will from 1846 that, there was this white man who said, I, John Sutton, proclaim that I own the following property. A mulatto slave, Lucy, aged about 45, and her 8 children, Easter, age 27, Maria, age 24, etc., all the way down to their youngest daughter, Sarah. And she also has, these 6 grandchildren down to the little 14-month-old toddler, Mahala. But I'm old and I want to free them on my death. Now, John's will didn't mention any white family. It didn't mention that he had a white wife or any children. And so for my great aunt's 100th birthday, I started digging and trying to find more information about this will that I just seen a little reference to. Yeah. And as I dug deeper and deeper, and finally a paralegal helped me identify this particular file that was located in Jacksonville, Florida, that held this original document. And the deeper I dug and the more I got into it, the more I began to think about what it must have been like for this woman, this mulatto slave, Lucy, aged about 45, in 1846, to be living with this white man, and then this document that was going to set her free. And you know, what kind of relationship did they have? And he owned her. There's no such thing as a relationship. That to us, there's no consent and ownership.
Right.
And yet there was something that made him decide to write this will to set them free. And I dug deeper and deeper. And at one point I even had sort of a mystical experience because I was sort of new to practicing Buddhism at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I practice Buddhism, and part of that means I chant twice a day, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and part of it's a prayer for enlightenment from our ancestors back 7+ generations.
Yeah.
And one day when I was chanting, I felt this presence, and I can't tell you exactly what it was, but I knew that my ancestors were speaking to me, and they were telling me there's more to this story, and it's your destiny, and my destiny to reveal this story. So that set me off on a path. And so I had a chance to go to Florida. And so while we were in Florida, I said my now husband, Jeffrey, and I drove 5.5 hours from southern Florida where we were for a conference to Jacksonville because I wanted to see these original documents and to put my finger on the X that my great, 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 great grandfather, John Sutton, had made that set my family free. And so we drove and we finally got there, and I put my hand on that document, and I was expecting to feel this rush of emotion, this joy or something. And instead, my lawyer brain is going, wait, there's more documents in this file than just this will. What are these other things? And as I looked through it, I realized that there had been a challenge to the will, and that John Sutton's brother, whose name was Shadrach, had, after John died, went to court and said that John was too old and too sick and too drunk to have set Lucy and her children free. And so he wanted to own my ancestors, right?
Oh, wow.
So as I dug deeper, I realized that part of this file was a transcript from the trial. And the transcript was the judge's handwritten notes. And so Judge William F. Crabtree wrote in his notes that a lawyer had come to John Sutton's house. He rode by horse 2 days. And the lawyer, Gregory Yale was his name, said that John had an appointment to come see him in town, but John was too sick to travel. So Gregory Yale rode by horseback 2 days out to the farm in Black Creek, Florida, and he met with John's family, not his slaves, but his family. And they served him dinner, and he talked to them. And John explained that they had lived in Georgia, where John wanted to set Lucy and her children free, but you couldn't do it in Georgia. It was against the law. But he'd heard a rumor that maybe you could do it in Florida, so he had packed up everything they had, and they moved 100 miles with 400 cows from Georgia to Florida, and he was going to set them free there. And he talked to the lawyer, and the lawyer said, you can't set people free here either, but if you do, you can do it by a will. But if you set them free, they got to get out of the state within 30 days, because if they're not, they can be re-enslaved. So according to this transcript, the lawyer said that's what John wanted him to do. And the lawyer said that Lucy came into the room while he was talking to John. And the lawyer asked Lucy, what would you want to do? Would you want to stay here, or would you want to go to another place? And Lucy said, I don't really want to go to a cold place or another country or any of that. But Shadrach is always threatened to beat us if he ever came to own us. So we got to get out of here.
Wow.
Of course, this is the judge's transcript. So the judge's notes also say, Lucy was a sensible old Negro, but of course her testimony is disregarded because a black person couldn't testify against the rights of a white person. So it's stricken through. But we know that the lawyer created this document, and only because I have found these documents and have seen in my own hands the original transcript that Lucy speaks, that we know what Lucy's desires were. So I have been given this gift to communicate my ancestor's voice.
Yes.
And that's what my voice is for. So
wow.
That's how I know that the ancestors are speaking to me and guiding our steps. And when I've talked to other people who have also been on similar journeys, artists and creators who've said the ancestors have been speaking to us and they're telling us that we have to take action. And at least up until about a year and a half ago, part of my question was, what is so important that the ancestors want us to know? And now we know that there's a whole lot of you know what rolling down the hill and rolling out from, I'll say, from the White House. And we have to use the same kind of determination and grit and the vision that my ancestor had, Lucy, of imagining a descendant like me who would be free and who could be a lawyer and who could unpack and find her story and share it with the world.
Yes.
And that's my job, is to leave behind a legacy for those who come after, that this year and the next year and whatever it is that we're going to live through in this reign of crazy, racist, white supremacist terror, it's going to end at some point. And we have to be the ones to make that come about. And we have to be prepared for what's going to come after. So, I think this is about revealing the history, healing from the past, and steeling ourselves for the future that we have to face. That's my mission. My mission in the arc of history towards justice, by sharing this story as much as I can.
It's so powerful.
I feel it.
Yeah, I feel it. I literally feel it, because
then I'm accomplishing my mission, because that's my mission, is to share it. And like I said, it's creative process too. So we're writing this musical that tries to get beyond people's, the little stories that you tell or whatever. So we're writing this antebellum, interracial, intergenerational, intersectional, fully sexual, unbelievably true tale of how the power of love will set you free.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Where we are.
That is exciting.
I'm excited.
And
a week from Saturday, we're going to be sort of showcasing that song and a few other songs from the musical that we're working on. So I'll send you an invitation. Maybe you'll be able to make it.
Please. That I would love it. I would absolutely love it. I mean, I had no idea. I had a little bit of a taste when we had our introduction, but now I'm really like, okay, this is a real mission here. And
real mission.
Yeah, this is a real mission. And it's, oh God, all of the things. I made a list of like 11 things, and I still think there's more of what we are currently dealing with today. We are dealing with so many things. And, speaking of energy, energetically, it is just pulling on us all globally.
It's exhausting, isn't it?
It is exhausting. It is exhausting. And, you do have to take a stand at some point. And it's a matter of, for each individual, it's going to be different. But I admire you for your, it's bold to be able to step into that space where you're revealing, truths that exist. And there's so much. It's almost hard to.
That's been part of the beauty of this process, is that as I'm looking at my ancestor stories, I've been uncovering all these other stories of people that we've never heard of, the wealthiest woman in Florida, who was a black woman formerly enslaved, who had to fight for her right to inherit her white former owner's property. A woman in New Orleans who was also one of the wealthiest women there, who had to fight for her right to inherit the property that she'd received from the white man who never owned her, because she had her own money and her own property that she'd inherited from her family. But his white family came in and tried to take it over after he died. And these kinds of stories have to inspire us that we can never give up. That we have to have the wisdom and the compassion and the courage to keep fighting for ourselves, for our humanity.
Yeah. That's right. We have to have the the grit, if you would, and the never give up persona. Like,
right,
it ain't going
wrong.
Right, determination. Thank you. That's powerful. So the musical, you've got a novel, I see, and a documentary. All of this kind of intertwined with the same history, correct?
Same mission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this mission is overpowering the lawyer thing, if you would. You're an attorney by trade, right?
Right.
And you've been to the school, you've done all the things, a Harvard graduate, boop, 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 but it has literally positioned you so that you can make an impact.
Right.
And it's, I don't know that there's many people who really take their career. Most people look at their careers as their job, right? And it's their means to make money and take care of the family and send the kids to college and da 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 da. But how many people are really going deep, right? And it's I can feel it coming for me right now.
I'm glad you can, because I feel it, and it's really my sincere desire is to share with people, and I think other people can find within their own careers.
Mm-hmm.
If you look inside for what it is that motivates you, that what is your mission? How can you try to make the world better?
Yeah.
And look around at what you're already doing, and somehow in the work that you're already doing, the contacts that you already have, and the networks that you are already building, in the work that you already do, there is value in starting from there and growing out. Because this practice of law that I have has enabled me to have the understanding of what these documents meant and to know how to find them. And I think other people have that too. They just haven't figured out how to get there. I think you just have to run your determination to find your mission and use that.
It's very powerful, because it wasn't until I was probably in my 40s, maybe 50s, that I even discovered my purpose and what my calling is. We go through school and we go through life and we just going through these motions, but we never imagined that, you never imagined that, and it wasn't until I really I went to what they call Genius University, and they work with a assessment called wealth dynamics and talent dynamics. And it's a tool that's used for building teams, but you really get clarity. It's an assessment you take. It doesn't take more than 20 minutes, and you get real clear about your genius and what your purpose is and what your passion is. And I was operating, hustling, doing my thing all the way through the entertainment business, and then transition to the real estate, went from intellectual property to real property, right? So, but now it wasn't until I discovered what my profile was that I should be doing what I love to do and what I have a passion for. And that is empowering people and motivating them and leading them. So different from just managing a team of agents. I was a broker of record over at Keller Williams in Santa Monica for 13 years. And I had 500-600 agents working under my license that, according to the Department of Real Estate, I was responsible for these people and their actions. So I was responsible for the oversight, right? And there was something very flattering per se, I didn't want to do it initially, but then one of my colleagues says, no, this is going to turn your career around completely. And I thought, okay, fine, I'll step into it. But it was through that process that I couldn't figure out why I was burning out. And there's a difference between leadership and management, okay, of people. And that was a big awakening when I realized that. But what it really led me to is understanding what my purpose is and what is it that turns me on. It's not work. It's not work. It's my mission. Okay.
Right.
And my parents, like I said, were very involved in the civil rights movement. And I watched that as a little girl. I watched all of what my mom was she was a real estate broker. And she got an offer to go to Yakima, Washington, which is a very small town. Well, it's not so small anymore, but in Washington State. And the whole family packed up from California here in LA.
That's courage.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my mom and my dad. They were, innovative. We get to Yakima. This is way before cell phones, way before computers, way before any of this. And when they saw that my mother was African American, suddenly the position was no longer available. So we had to pivot. We had to pivot as a family, and my mom, we had to pivot. And so it didn't hit me until I was literally in my probably mid 40s that it's their legacy that I'm carrying out. That's really, at the end of the day, I am carrying out my parents' vision and legacy with what they were dealing with. And now I'm doing things a little differently. I'm not so involved with like the front line of civil rights, but, it's our purpose. Yeah. When you get it, and when you get it, then you can get on fire, right? And then you can really lean into it. So instead of focusing on all those things that you may not be excited about or may not have talents, you don't have to focus on your weaknesses. You focus on your strengths, and then you grow from there. Then you can make a difference in a lot of lives, right?
Right.
So I appreciate everything that you're sharing here with us today. It really touches home. And God, oh my goodness. Let me think here. We got some more questions. We got off into a thing here.
But that idea of finding your purpose and finding your mission, it's what I've come to understand is that this is truly what our responsibility is as human beings in living our lives.
Yeah.
It's a constant step, a process of trying to find what is your purpose. And I can't say that the purpose that I have today will be the same purpose that I'll have 5 years from now.
Right.
But it will help to shape that. And just as you said, all those experiences that you had before that weren't quite where you needed to be, you needed all those though.
Yeah.
And you needed to go through that process to come to an understanding of what your true purpose is, right?
That's right.
So nothing is lost. Nothing is wasted. It wasn't time that you shouldn't have spent. It's what made you who you are so that you are ready to stand in your purpose now. And from this day forward, apply those lessons and use it to advance that purpose, to advance that mission. I think that's what we're all supposed to be trying to do. From this day forward, recognizing everything that came before us, everything that our ancestors gave to us and poured into us, that inspired us and made us strong.
Yeah. And
from this day forward, how can you try to move in a way that's consistent with what is your ultimate purpose on this planet? We all have a role to play in shaping.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So you've been a leader in advancing diversity and equity in trust and estate law. Why is this work so critical for the future of the legal profession? I think you hit on it earlier, but I want you to tag me on this one.
Yeah, I recently did a program with the American College of Trust and Estate Counsel, which is a national organization of trust and estates lawyers from around the country. I happen to have been the first African American fellow in 2001, even though it was founded in 1946.
Wow.
That there tells you that there was something wrong. Without attributing any necessarily racist motives, we live in a society that has systemic racism built into it. I'm sure those people who were in the college at the time just never knew any black people who were doing trust and estates or never thought what they had to say was important. But being a part of it, I understand that making sure that people have estate planning and that their intentions are carried out, and that the idea that estate planning is what we all should have in place
Mm-hmm.
is essential for our continued growth and progress. We keep watching and reading about this great wealth transfer from the past generation to the next generation.
Yeah.
And we are missing out on this because the statistics show that the racial wealth gap is already huge as a result of slavery, redlining, racist actions that have kept, this difference between whites and blacks and Latinos and other people of color. And I think the statistics show that it's going to take hundreds of years before we can do anything to fix that unless we take action.
Yeah.
And part of that action is making sure that people's wishes are fulfilled in terms of transfers of property from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
So that's why, and I think I think we have to expect that the people who are going to care about making sure that people of color get their estate planning done are people of color. Right. So we need to have more of us doing this work because we are naturally going to think about how that is going to affect us. And, again, taking nothing away from anybody who doesn't think about that on a daily basis.
Right.
I can't help but think about it on a daily basis because of the skin that I live in. And so I want to have more of us doing the work that I do so that they're thinking about the future of African American and other people of color and making sure that we are trying to equalize this crazy racial wealth disparity and generally decrease the wealth disparity in this country that is so harmful for our collective progress.
Right. Thank you. That's beautiful. And that's important, Now, can you talk about your role in developing the UCLA Postgraduate Fellowship for Racial Equity in Trust and Estate Law and what impact you hope it will have? You sort of touched on it there. Yeah.
Yeah. whole mouthful. I again, because I am involved in national organizations that do trust in estates, I'd heard about a fellowship that was started, I think, up in Washington State, as a matter of fact, but in I think it was East Spokane.
Spokane.
And they came up with this idea to try and get a person of color to help train people to become who are already lawyers to do trust in estates for underserved communities and then to provide those for underserved communities. And I thought, wow, we should do something like that in Los Angeles. So I talked to the people who had been involved in that process up there. I can't think of the name of it. Right now it'll come to me. And I went back to the American College of Trust and Estate Council, this organization that I'm a part of and that I love.
Yeah.
And we basically made a pitch and to the ACTEC Foundation, which raised funds. And then we found law firms locally in Los Angeles who were willing to support as well. And so we all came together and were able to create a fund to hire a new fellow from UCLA.
Yeah.
Who's a recent law grad who was helping with ETSEDEC, which is a local legal services organization that does amazing work in Los Angeles for the underserved to provide legal services. And so working together with another lawyer, Alan Cuttrow, who was also troubled by an article that I had written about how we need more Black people doing estate planning.
Yeah.
So we came together and sort of did the legwork and the research. And with our partners, ETSEDEC and UCLA, we created this fellowship. And it's continued to grow. Then Los Angeles County got involved because they heard about it too, and they had some funding to also provide support. And so we also talked to the Langston Bar Association, which is the Black Bar Association in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And they joined us as partners as well. So all together, we've been working to try to make
Mm.
sure that we can provide estate planning services to underserved communities,
Yeah.
to make sure that people are getting basic wills, basic documents done,
Mhm.
and are promoting that. And so it's been a thrill for me because it's, it's a tiny, tiny part of this big, iceberg that we have to get through. But I think it
Right.
was, um, Maya Angelou said, you know, I can't build a pyramid by myself, but if we can each bring a grain of sand, this is what we
Mm.
can do together. So
Mhm.
we're trying to figure out how we can create collaborative experiences and partnerships to provide legal services to underserved communities.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. Everything is so just mission purpose oriented. And
Once you
it's,
figure out what the mission is, then that
yeah.
kind of helps to guide you. When you have a question, what should I do next? There's this uh, Japanese concept ikigai, which is what you do well, what you love, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And if
Mm.
you can sort of bring all that together,
Yes.
that's your mission or your purpose in life. And once I
Yes.
sort of focus on that, it helps you answer those questions. What should I do next? Should I take
Mhm.
this job or that job? Well,
Mhm.
is it consistent with my mission? Is it, do I see a way that it becomes part of this mission that I have for my life? And
Yes.
if so, that helps me to answer those challenging questions about what we want to do next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's powerful. It's really
And
powerful.
I let you talk about genius too, because
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have genius. I think, we think
Absolutely.
when I was a kid, you take a test, you get an IQ test. If you're 130, then you're a genius, and you're below, you're not. We all have genius. And I think
Absolutely.
even the original word for genius it was sort of like this in the Roman times. I think it was, the spirit of sort of a house or a family,
Mm-hmm.
that thing that makes you unique and special and different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's up to each of us, and that's part of our mission, is to find out, what is your genius? What is
Yes.
that thing, that spirit that animates you, that can
Mm-hmm.
help you to connect with other human beings? Because ultimately that's what this is. It's an enterprise of human beings interconnected and interacting with each other.
That's right.
And that's how we advance.
That's right. This is what I love about what we're building here with this podcast is that we're building relationships, and we're building relationships with people who are like-minded and who are also of the mind of being servants, because at the end of the day, we're all servants, and there's things for us to do that are much on a bigger scale than just, I'm not here to just sell a house. No. This is much bigger than that, okay? And when you connect yourself with like-minded professionals, then you create what I call a vetted consortium of professionals, okay? And it's a beautiful thing because everything is contingent upon relationship, okay?
Right.
And and I don't know, it's powerful,
We can
it's
truly create value together.
exactly,
That's what
we
we're
can
about, is
create
trying to
value
create value.
yeah, that's right. And that's what this is about. So I'm excited. I'm excited to have you with us. Thank you for being here with me. We really had a chance to jump into a lot of stuff, and I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about highlighting you and your practice and your firm, not just from a you know the legal attorney thing, but just overall, you've got a strong message, and your mission is very clear, and we're here to support you. So I want to thank you for coming on today. I also want to thank our listeners for joining us on the Elite Insights with Tony Patillo. This is where wisdom meets legacy, and we've had a lot of wisdom today and a lot of legacy to come, right? So thank you again. Be sure to subscribe and share this episode. Share this episode and continue building your own path of wisdom and legacy. And we want to thank everybody who tuned in, and we want to thank you again, Terry. And we're going to check back in with you and see what's up. I want to come to some of these things and see these musical, and it's fascinating.
I want to give you a hug.
Oh, well, I want to give you a hug too. Thank you.